Welcome to Cinema Bites, your go-to for movie recaps in a flash, big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. The movie begins on a morning with beautiful Banter Piper, who has weak eyesight and can only see shapes and lights, was waiting for her brother Andy after his golf practice. While she was waiting, she overheard a group of teenagers chatting and wished she could be friends with them. She approached them, but they responded coldly and arrogantly. At that moment, Andy arrived and tried to lighten the mood. Piper joked with the group, saying she didn't even know who that was. But despite her attempt to joke, the teenagers remained uninterested. So Andy gently took her away and they left. She told him, "They didn't like me, right?" Andy, trying to comfort her, lied and said they did like her. Then he started describing their appearance jokingly, saying their taste in clothes needed improvement, which made Piper laugh. Later at home, Andy was outside fixing his car's side mirror when Piper suddenly called out to him, saying their father, Phil, wasn't responding from inside the bathroom. Andy broke the bathroom door with a knife and found their father lying on the floor, clearly dead from a hard fall. Andy was shocked and stood frozen, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. Piper arrived moments later, felt her father's body on the floor, collapsed in tears, and insisted he just had chemo. He was supposed to be getting better. When the paramedics were carrying Phil on the stretcher, Andy noticed the stretcher kept scraping against the door threshold. The next day, a social worker named Wendy informed Piper that, since she was a minor, she would be moving to live with a kind foster mother named Laura. She then told Andy he would be placed in a separate care unit. Andy objected and insisted that he needed to stay with Piper because he had always taken care of her. He added that he planned to apply for Piper's custody as soon as he turned 18, which was only 3 months away. Wendy sympathized but explained that Laura had previously faced difficulties caring for children with troubled backgrounds. This surprised Piper, who used their secret code word with Andy, grapefruit, meaning tell the truth. Andy quietly admitted that he had caused some trouble when he was 8 years old. Wendy asked him to stay out of trouble for the next 3 months until he was eligible for custody. He agreed, and after a moment of silence, she decided to keep them together for now. After packing their things, Andy and Piper slept under the table in silence, with the faint sound of an airplane passing overhead. Andy looked at Piper, trying to cheer her up, and said, "That's how life goes. When people die, they don't just get buried or cremated, they book a plane to the sky, just like Dad." The next day, they moved to their new home. Piper was holding her father's pillow, as a memory, on the way. Andy pulled down the car's sun visor so Piper could feel the shapes of the sunlight. After an hour, they arrived at Laura's house. While trying to park, Andy accidentally bumped the car into a stone, so he backed up a bit and stopped close to the house. At the door, Laura greeted them cheerfully and encouraged them to come in. Laura welcomed Piper with exaggerated enthusiasm and suggested they take a group photo. But while taking the picture, she deliberately positioned her head to cover Andy's face. Then she excitedly told Piper she had to meet her dog, Boom Boom, but it turned out to be a taxidermied dog. Laura, laughing, added that her cat Junkman wasn't stuffed. Andy noticed a rug with a raised strip for the visually impaired and asked if it was for Piper. Laura revealed it was for her blind daughter Kathy. Andy curiously asked if she was home, but Laura revealed she had passed away. Andy apologized, and Piper asked how she died. Laura quietly said she drowned in the swimming pool, then got a phone call from Wendy that interrupted them. Piper and Andy took the opportunity to explore the backyard, and while there, they accidentally let the cat outside. Laura quickly yelled at them not to let it out. As Andy tried to call the cat back, a young boy was holding it tightly by the empty pool. At that moment, Laura ran over, snatched the cat from the boy, and the boy's strange gaze lingered on Andy and Piper. Inside, Laura explained that she was also fostering another child named Oliver, who had lost his family just like them, and added that he had been mute since Kathy died. Afterwards, Piper asked Andy what Oliver looked like. Not wanting her to worry, he lied and said Oliver looked cute and actually smiled at her. She was quiet for a moment and asked what color his hair was. Before Andy could make something up, Laura interrupted and said his hair was red and curly. In the afternoon, Andy went out to get their things from the car and noticed a strange white circle surrounding the house, but ignored it. He went, followed Laura as she showed Piper her room, saying it used to be Kathy's. At the door, Laura simply told Andy that his room was right next to it. Andy entered his small, cramped room and noticed the door didn't even close all the way. An hour later, Andy was texting a friend, asking if he planned to apply for guardianship in 3 months. Andy replied yes. At that moment, Laura's phone rang, and she curiously asked if it was his girlfriend. Andy shook his head and said it was just a friend. Laura relaxed and asked what they were talking about, if it was something about his father. Andy gave her an awkward smile, avoiding the question. Laura pressed him, saying she used to be a psychological counselor too. Andy didn't answer, Then they heard Piper's voice through the wall. Andy was glad for the interruption and used it as an excuse to go talk to her. He started lifting weights to clear his head. Meanwhile, Piper was exploring her new room, with Laura watching from outside, a small, worried smile on her face. Later that night, Laura checked the weather app on her phone, then put a videotape in the player and started watching strange magical rituals on TV. At midnight, after tossing and turning in bed, Andy got up and looked out the window, seeing Laura and Oliver entering a shed in the garden. The next day, Laura painted a thin white line around the pool, then looked up at the sky in silence. Later, Laura shouted for Andy to wake up. He woke up startled, noticed drool on his face, and realized he'd wet himself in his sleep. Embarrassed, he gathered his sheets and put them in the laundry. He went to take a shower, but his mind flashed back to finding his father dead on the bathroom floor. Meanwhile, Laura locked Oliver in his room, then took Piper and Andy to Phil's funeral. At the ceremony, Piper whispered to Andy, asking if their father looked good without looking. Andy said yes. Piper doubted him and said, "Grapefruit." Andy still lied. After the ceremony, Laura secretly cut a lock of Phil's hair and took Andy aside, telling him he'd regret it if he didn't see his father's face one last time. She added that some people believe the soul stays in the body for months after death. Piper felt betrayed that Andy had lied. At the same time, Oliver broke his window and escaped, heading to the shed. But since it was locked, he stared at the chicken coop nearby. Back at the funeral, Laura took Andy inside and encouraged him to give his father a goodbye kiss. Andy, hesitant, kissed him on the cheek, but Laura pressured him to kiss him on the lips, claiming it was a tradition. Andy, who is terrified, he stepped back, and Laura leaned in and kissed Phil herself. After that, in the car, Laura insisted that they all had to be happy because funerals were supposed to be celebrations. The three of them played, drank, and danced. Laura even let Piper drink a little. In the end, Piper fainted, and Andy, feeling a bit sober, sincerely thanked Laura for helping them get through the day. Laura, understanding, said she had been through something similar and encouraged him to talk about his feelings, saying that it lightens the burden. Andy hesitated, then asked her how she dealt with Kathy's death. Laura honestly replied that she didn't. She confessed that when her daughter was buried, she felt as if she was abandoning her, so she stayed in the cemetery for days. In a trembling voice, Laura added that she would do anything just to hear her call her mom one more time. They fell silent for a moment, and Andy finally opened up. He talked about how he and his father used to talk, but when it came to Piper, Laura interrupted him and asked, "Is that why you hit her when you were 8? Andy froze. "Who told you?" Laura said. "Wendy?" Andy revealed that when his father married Piper's mother, he felt like his father had finally found his family. So in a desperate attempt to get his father's attention, he started causing trouble at school. His father, when angry, used to beat him, and always turned on the shower during the beatings to cover the sound so Piper wouldn't hear. In the middle of the night, Laura peed in a cup and poured it on Andy's pants while he was sleeping. It turned out she had been drugging Andy in secret by putting drugs in his protein powder. She unlocked his phone and deleted all of Oliver's photos. Suddenly, Laura heard a cat screaming. She took Oliver to the bathroom and calmly said, "I know you're hungry, but this isn't the right time." Then she asked him quietly and intently, "Are you inside? Did you do it right?" Oliver looked directly into her eyes, and the tap behind Laura turned on by itself. Oliver slowly turned red, and a rustling sound like a cat's came from his throat. The next morning, Andy woke up soaked in urine, upset and confused. He got up to clean himself but ran into Laura in the hallway. She insisted on taking his clothes. At that moment, Piper came in and excitedly told Andy that she and Laura were going shopping. Then Laura smelled Andy's clothes and asked, "Did you wet yourself?" He said he didn't know what happened. Laura, in a calm tone, told him it was okay and that he should take a shower, and Andy left. Laura told Piper, "Your brother isn't well," and began explaining more to her in the car. Meanwhile, Andy showered outside with the garden hose because the shower still reminded him of the trauma. At that moment, he saw Oliver raising his hand next to the window. He thought it was a greeting, so he waved back. In fact, Oliver was killing a fly, caught it, and ate it. After that, Andy went to Oliver's room but found it locked. He got a knife and opened it. In the living room, Andy kept asking Oliver a lot of questions, but Oliver was staring into space. Andy gave him a notebook and pen and told him he'd give him food if he wrote something. Oliver took the notebook and wrote. Andy gave him a piece of cantaloupe still stuck to the knife, but instead of just eating the fruit, Oliver grabbed the knife and ate it. Andy watched him for a moment, then heard a metallic scratching sound. When he looked again, he saw Oliver biting the knife, terrified. Andy snatched the knife and dragged Oliver outside to get help or take him to the hospital. But as soon as Oliver crossed the white circle drawn on the ground, he screamed and recoiled, his body starting to convulse violently. Andy heard a faint whisper coming from Oliver saying, "Help me." Then he noticed the paper where Oliver had earlier written the word bird. At that time, Laura took Oliver to her room and started playing a video of magical rituals. Immediately, he snapped out of the trance he was in. At that moment, he spoke and asked her, "What are you doing to me?" His voice was raw and terrified. She quickly put her hand over his mouth. Then Laura watched the rituals and, following the instructions, began drawing circles on his head, trying to calm him down. A little later, Piper and Andy knocked on Laura's door. She was still upset with Andy. Piper came in, but then Laura fed Oliver a lock of Piper's hair. Anna asked if Oliver will be okay. Laura smiled and said, "He'll be just fine." Later, Andy gathered the courage to go to the bathroom again. But as he entered, the door opened behind him, and standing there was the pale figure of his dead father. In the stillness, there was a sense of impending doom. She will die in the rain. Andy panicked and tried to run but slipped, hitting his head hard on the floor. A little later, Andy woke up in a hospital room, dizzy. From the window, he saw the rain falling. Andy begged the doctors to let him go, convinced that his sister was in danger, but they sedated him. We returned to Laura's house, which was filling with rainwater. At that time, Piper sent her brother a message saying that Laura said he didn't want any visitors and that she missed him a lot. At night, Piper quietly walked to Laura's room and whispered, "I can't sleep." She meant Andy. Laura, with a warm smile, invited her in. Then, Laura said tenderly that Kathy loved the rain. Piper, watching TV, asked, "Is that her?" Laura replied, "Yes." Then Piper asked Laura to describe Kathy. Laura replied, "She was 12 years old, had freckles, and long brown hair." The next day, Laura visited Andy, who immediately asked where Piper was. She replied that Piper was at home with Oliver. Laura then told him that he needed to stay in the hospital another day, and he was confused. Andy asked again where Piper was. Laura tried to calm him and said that Piper had sent him a gift, perfume. Andy, still uneasy, warned Laura not to let Piper go out in the rain, saying she could die in it. When Laura was surprised, he explained that before he fell in the shower, he saw his father. Laura cut him off and said, "Your father appears to you in the shower because you killed him." Andy was stunned. Laura clarified again that maybe he associates rain with death because his father died in the shower. Frustrated and confused, Andy kept blaming himself. Laura promised to keep Piper inside, but did the exact opposite. Laura and Piper played outside in the rain, and Laura was reminiscing about Kathy's face and the time they played in the swimming pool. Later, Laura took Piper to the edge of the garden, gave her a purple jacket, and said it was Kathy's favorite. Piper thanked her. Laura then quietly told Piper that she could call her mom if she wanted, but Piper quietly replied, "Maybe." Laura also tied Piper's hair and remarked that Kathy used to do her hair the same way. Then, in a gentle voice, Laura asked if Piper still wanted to live with her even after Andy turned 18. Piper refused and said she always wanted to stay with her brother, but promised they would visit Laura on weekends. Laura then told Piper there was something else she needed to show her. Quietly, she led Piper to the freezer and placed her hand on Kathy's cold, dead body. When Piper hesitantly asked, "What's this?" Laura simply replied, "Meter." The next day, as she was bringing Andy home from the hospital, Laura was venting to Wendy on the phone, clearly unhappy about his early release. At the hospital, she said she had a fight with the staff and claimed that Andy had a psychotic episode, but they told her he was showing signs of improvement. As soon as they got home, Andy checked on Piper, but Laura interrupted him from outside and accused him of being a bit strange and still not better. Then, Andy tried to exercise but got distracted, and in the end, he drank his protein shake. At that time, Laura continued watching the strange rituals, and her real goal finally became clear. Laura is trying to bring her daughter back from the dead. The rituals have 4 steps to connect with the devil, so Laura managed to summon a demon, and now it lives inside Oliver. The second step is simulating death. The person who is supposed to be the new body, Piper, must die in exactly the same way as the original, which is Kathy. Since Kathy drowned in a rain-filled pool, Piper must drown in the same way. The third step is consumption of the body. The demon must eat the original body, so in this case, Oliver must eat Kathy's corpse. The last step is the transfer of the soul. Finally, the demon must return the remains to the new body, meaning Oliver must return Kathy's remains to Piper's mouth. The next morning, Laura sprayed herself with Andy's perfume and punched Piper in the face. Later, when Andy woke up and went downstairs, he noticed Piper's bruised eye and asked who hurt her. Laura immediately accused him. Piper calmly said it couldn't have been him, but Laura cut her off and accused Andy of being violent just like his father. Piper was shocked to learn that their father used to beat Andy. Then Andy noticed something strange about Oliver's appearance and tried to take a picture to show the social worker. They argued, and in his anger, Andy punched the wall. Laura pretended Andy had hit her. He told Piper they had to leave, but she hesitated and said, "Grapefruit." Back to Andy. Wendy told him that Laura claimed he was soiling himself and that he was violent with Laura and Piper, but Andy ignored her questions and pointed out that Laura had kidnapped the boy. He blamed her for not investigating enough. Wendy then dropped her bombshell. Laura had worked in childcare for 20 years and was a close friend, insisting Laura could never hurt a child. Meanwhile, Laura returned home to find Oliver had trashed the whole house. Oliver slowly approached Laura and bit a chunk of her flesh as she screamed in pain and terror. Laura ran and locked herself in a room. Outside, Oliver began to speak and scream in Laura's voice. It turned out that if the demon takes any part of a person's body, a piece of flesh, a lock of hair, anything, it can imitate them. That's why Laura fed Oliver Phil's hair to worsen Andy's madness and create a rift between him and Piper, slowly and methodically. Laura then tied her arm and, to calm Oliver, drew a symbol on the window and finally let him eat Kathy's corpse. Back to Andy. He told Wendy that Laura named the little boy Oliver, but Wendy was suspicious and said Oliver was actually the name of Laura's nephew, who has red hair. In the end, Andy convinced Wendy to visit Laura's house. On the way, Andy left Piper a touching voice message, admitting their father used to hurt him, especially when Piper wasn't home. He said he lied about it because he didn't want her to see how bad things really were. He expressed deep regret for the only time he hit Piper when he was 8 and swore to protect her ever since. He insisted Laura was the one who hit her and that she also kidnapped Oliver. The message ended with, "I love you, Piper, grapefruit." Andy gave the phone to Wendy without ending the call, so Laura would hear Wendy's voice when she arrived. Realizing Wendy was coming, Laura quickly started cleaning the house and poured Andy's protein powder down the sink. Wendy and Andy arrived at Laura's house. Wendy told Andy to stay in the car. At the door, Wendy told Laura that Andy had raised new concerns about child abuse and that she had to search the house immediately. Laura welcomed her and showed her Piper's room. Meanwhile, Andy got out of the car, jumped over a fence, and approached the locked garden shed. He grabbed a bird feeder, broke the lock, looked inside, and found Oliver hunched over a corpse, eating it. Inside the house, Wendy showed Laura a picture of Connor Bird, the missing child, and asked if she had seen him. At that moment, Wendy noticed Laura was bleeding and heard Andy screaming for her from outside. Laura calmly told Wendy, "I can bring Kathy back." Terrified, Wendy ran outside and saw the horrific scene Andy had uncovered. As soon as the two tried to escape, Laura hit them with her car. Wendy died instantly. Andy was still alive but badly injured, and Laura drowned him in a puddle while he struggled to breathe. Laura quietly whispered, "Everything will be okay." Then Laura picked Piper up from practice. The coach said she had spoken to Laura earlier about Piper's bruised eye, but Laura simply replied, "Not now." At home, Piper asked Laura to call her phone because she couldn't find it. Laura said she would, and after a few moments, Piper heard Andy's voice and followed it upstairs. She touched someone, and at that moment, Laura appeared and asked Piper what she was doing there. Piper said she heard Andy's voice, but Laura insisted it was Oliver. When Piper realized Laura had lied about Oliver's hair, she ran and locked herself in a room. Inside, she tripped over a body and realized it was her brother from the braces on his teeth. His hands were partially eaten, which explained how Oliver could mimic Andy's voice. Piper cried and whispered, "Grapefruit," apologizing to Andy. Laura opened the door with a spare key and calmly explained her plan to resurrect Kathy. Piper managed to escape, but hit her head and lost consciousness. Laura dragged her to the swimming pool, where the grotesquely swollen Oliver was waiting. Laura began to drown Piper, who resisted until she was about to give up. Piper shouted one word that stopped Laura in her tracks. "Mom." Laura froze, her mind flashing back to Kathy gasping and drowning. Piper managed to escape, but Oliver wasn't ready to let her go. He attacked her, but she kicked him hard in the stomach, causing him to vomit violently. Piper took the opportunity and ran toward the street to get help. At that moment, Oliver saw the missing child poster with his real name, Connor Bird. At that moment, he was able to cross the chalk line Laura had drawn to keep him trapped. At the same time, Laura quietly carried Kathy's decayed body to the pool, but not before reopening the wound on her arm, her blood mixing with the rain in the pool as she hugged Kathy in the water. In the end, the authorities found Connor, Laura, and Piper. As soon as Piper was safe in the car, she pulled out Andy's phone, which she had taken earlier, and played the voice message he left her. Andy's voice filled the silence with his love, regret, and promise. Piper listened intently. Then, in the distance, a plane passed overhead. Piper looked up and smiled. That's the end of the movie.